shifting back to Ethan and us as parents parenting him, one thing I wanted to talk to you about is our parenting styles
Mhm.
over the years. And one thing that I see when I'm working with co-parents a lot is that post-divorce, two main things will get in the way and cause a lot of friction. And one thing is values, if there are very different values amongst each parent, and it's not understood or discussed. That I don't think was an issue or is an issue for us. For us, it was the other thing that I see, which is parenting styles. That sometimes
Mhm.
both, each parent will have a different parenting style, and then they'll make a judgment that the other one's doing it wrong. And just for the audience's sake, I know Matt, we know this, but just wanted to let people know there are four main categories of parenting styles, and one is authoritarian, which is really strict. There's an authoritative, which some schools of thought say the authoritative is the best for the child, where it's warm, but there's also boundaries and rules, but there's the warmth and support to the kid. There's permissive, where it's warm, but no control. The kid kind of dictates how and what they do. And then the last is uninvolved, where there's just, no contact, not a lot of involvement and no rules. So I think that got in the way for us. I feel like I was a bit of a mixture of that authoritative, where there was warmth and some boundaries, but definitely had my moments of permissive, where I'd let Ethan get away with things. And I remember once or twice you even said you're not his friend. And in my mind, I justified some of those behaviors because I thought, well, as long as the outcome is what I want, as long as where my boundary is set, he does that in the end, it's okay. And in looking back, there were times where I could have taken a more engaged approach with him. Um, so that's kind of where my parenting style was. How would you describe yours? And did it change over the years?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it is really tricky, right? Because when you are operating as a family unit, as long as there's some overlap between the two parenting styles, they kind of work together to form a whole and the child benefits from that whole.
Yeah.
But as separate parents, they become almost it's almost in conflict, right? So
Yeah.
so you described your style as having some element of permissiveness.
Yeah.
And I really didn't have much of that at all. I was really authoritarian. I mean, as much as I would like to say I was authoritative, I'm a very much a rule based guy. So Ethan had a lot of rules with me, and where that generated conflict for us was when you were being permissive and I was being authoritarian. It led to a narrative in my head, at least, that you were being the good cop and I was being the bad cop.
Mm, yeah.
And during those times, because things wax and wane, right? Nothing's ever constant. But during those times, it made me fearful that Ethan was going to choose you over me. In fact, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but approaching Ethan's 14th birthday, and at 14, that's the age in Georgia when Ethan could have chosen where he wanted to live and we would no longer have a say. In the run up to that, I was terrified, really, that I was going to lose him to you and that he would just say on his birthday, "I want to live with mum, bye bye." And that was really hard. It, I did a lot of reflection during that period, and I realized just how authoritarian I had been. It made me think a lot about it, and it actually made me realize what is one of my biggest regrets, and that is how post separation and divorce, I felt like my life was just spinning out of control. I couldn't control anything. Like it was just everything was just a mess. Um, but I could control a young boy, and he's very easily controllable, and so I did. And some kind of displacement, right, where I try to make myself feel better by controlling him, which I feel terrible about now. And Ethan, I know you're going to be listening to this at some point, and I'm sorry, son. That was really bad. Um, but just coming back to the parental styles, it is really hard when you have a conflict like that to sit down and come to an agreement, because you both feel that what you're doing is right. You both feel that it's right for the child, and there's no obvious solution. There's no obvious compromise. And it's also, a bit of whiplash for the child, right? Ethan being with me and being authoritarian for a week, and then he would come to
Yeah.
you and you would get permissive for a week. And, you know, I think I think that hurt him a little bit, but it also gave him an opportunity to be a very sly child and take advantage of that, right? And sometimes he would use those disparities to really kind of work his magic to get, what
Yeah.
he wanted as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I'm trying to hold back the tears here. Um, but I also feel like oh man, I want to, like I want to give you the hug and be like, you and I were both doing the best we could, and that's what a parent does, right? A parent does need to parent their child, whether you want to call that control or teach or guide. I mean, that's a part
Yeah.
of parenting, right? We all do it a little differently, but yeah, and I think we both agree that we love who Ethan is becoming, who he is growing into,
Absolutely.
the young man he's growing into. And so I think in the end, it's worked. He absolutely has both of us in him.
Yep. Absolutely.
um, good, bad, and ugly, and from both sides. But yeah, and I think that's the thing too is to for me to always try to pull myself back out of the weeds and say, you know, what's the outcome, right? A child does need, excuse me, discipline and rules.
Yep.
And I never faulted you for that. I think what was hard for me was seeing sometimes the interaction between you two
Yep.
and just how tense it would get at times. That was hard for me.
Yeah.
And it was reflective of us and where our relationship had gotten. So that got personal too. And I'll tell you, even a few years out, I had to be careful once I became aware of it. And I know and I'm not proud of this at all, but earlier on, there were moments where, you would be very tough on something, and then he and I would have an experience where it was easier and smoother, and I would feel a little, uppity about that of, oh, well, look at me, look what I can do. And that once I did more of, my own work in the therapy and everything, and I became aware of it, it was still even, I'd have moments of, Jeannie, check yourself.
Sure.
Um,
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to feel good about ourselves, right?
yeah,
Um, you know, but it's a fine line between something we've mentioned a couple of times on this call is just stopping and just telling yourself it's okay, right? And being easier on yourself and telling yourself you're doing the best you can. It's a fine line between that and I'm like, huh, I'm a better parent. Right.
right. Yeah, yeah. It's not a competition, right? I mean, and I think that's what happens so much is it begins to feel like a competition, and then even if one parent wins, the kid's losing.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Agreed.